Call the October the 17th, 2019 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission to order, please. We'll start out with citizens forum. Mark, do we have anyone in the audience?
I do have one, Tim Sayers.
Okay, and while coming up to the microphone, do you have an announcement you want to make?
Well, we do have a training session coming up on October 31st here at the Town Hall from 6 to 8 p.m. I know that's Halloween. It wasn't anything I had any control over. So it's open to the public. Actually, anyone can attend, 6 to 8. Yeah. It's basically dealing with fundamentals of zoning and subdivision regulations and private property rights. So for those of you that don't have your 4 hours of required education for the year, it would be a good opportunity to get 2 of those. So there's also a session on the 29th in Jefferson City, but I don't, unless you're out that way, I can't imagine that would.
If you can't make Halloween, then
You really wanted to go, but you had a Halloween commitment. And that's 6 to 8 there as well at the Fire Hall, Jefferson City.
To add to all you already have to do, at some point in time, could you let us all know how many hours we have that you have recorded?
Yeah. Just send me an email to remind me.
Okay.
I'll check it. Some of y'all already have it. Fair number of you.
Okay,
So.
go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Tim Sayers. I live at 12812 Pecos Road. Here to talk about an item that is not on the agenda. It is about the Pecos Road connection between Saddle Ridge subdivision and the new development in Ivy Farms. For most of you on the board, getting to be old friends for as often as I've been here. The new gentleman, I think you only saw me here last month, but I'm a pretty persistent guy, and once I've got locked onto something, I stay with it till we get to a proper resolution. So the topic is that they are looking with the new development Ivy Farm to connect Pecos Road and Saddle Ridge to the new development in Ivy Farms. And part of this is driven by fire code. Part of this is driven by some plan that was put together multiple years ago with the town. The irony of it is that the two affected parties, which are the Saddle Ridge subdivision and the developer, both would actually be happier if the road didn't connect for regular vehicular traffic. So it's kind of interesting that the two parties involved really don't see the value in it. Meanwhile, the town continues to forge ahead with that. So, I'm here speaking on behalf of myself. Last month, I mentioned that the sentiment in the neighborhood is changing. Originally, people didn't quite grasp what was going to happen, and now with bulldozers and they're turning dirt over, the reality is starting to click in with people, and we're getting more and more people in the neighborhood saying, hey, gosh, we really don't want that road to connect. The Homeowners Association is working on a letter stating our position for the neighborhood. Had hoped to have that at this meeting, and unfortunately just didn't get it done quite in time. But there's still plenty of time for the town to take a step back, listen to what the two parties that are involved with it would prefer. It doesn't have any impact on any other neighborhood. It's not as if it was a throughway that's going to connect 4 or 5 other subdivisions. It's just 2 subdivisions. And it's actually at the worst possible spot in the neighborhood. It should be at the top if it's going to try and do extra connectivity and emergency traffic. It's one of the first roads when you get in the subdivision. So again, ask the town to take a step back, listen to the people. You have a chance to do the right thing, and at some point in time in the future, if both the Ivy Farms and Saddle Ridge, if there's a hue and cry, man, we want that road opened up, open it up. But do the thing that the parties at this point in time would like to have done. So I appreciate the time to speak, and look forward to having some more conversation with the town.
Thank you.
And I have one other. Ashley Kendall is also citizen forum.
Hello, I'm Ashley Kendall. I live at 12804 Pecos Road. I'm also here to discuss the same issue that Mr. Tim Sayers just brought up and continue to the discussion regarding the Pecos Road connection from the new development at Ivy Farm to Pecos to Saddle Ridge. This discussion, I've been involved with it since 2018. I know we've had people from our neighborhood come to the Planning Commission meeting in March, and also last month, my husband, Jeffrey Kendall, also spoke. And my real concern with it, and many of the neighbors that I have and other residents of Saddle Ridge, would be, the main issue is that Saddle Ridge is ill-equipped, we believe, to have additional traffic through Pecos Road and then onto Saddle Ridge. This is because Pecos Road itself is one of the straightest and longest straight sections in the neighborhood, and there are no traffic calming measures on it as it stands right now. Also, Saddle Ridge was designed in the 1980s and then developed in the 1990s, and we do not have sidewalks. So from a safety standpoint, that greatly concerns me and our children. The new cars that will be coming from Ivy Farm will go down Pecos Road and then turn onto Saddle Ridge and be funneled right past the hub of our neighborhood, which is where we have our clubhouse, our playground, our lending library, our pool, the tennis courts. It's where all the kids in the neighborhood are, and there are no sidewalks. So my big concern is that to connect a neighborhood that was built in the 1990s to a brand new neighborhood that will have sidewalks, and put additional traffic on those, especially two parts of our neighborhood that are so pedestrian heavy due to the focal point of our neighborhood being right there, is a big concern, again, to the safety of our residents. So we would greatly appreciate your consideration in looking at this again. I think our neighborhood overall would agree that we are more than happy to have it open for emergency vehicles. We see the point in that 100%, and to pedestrians and bicycles. And how that looks could be with bollards or perhaps a narrowing of the road right there with a sign for emergency vehicles only. We're open to what that looks like, but if we could not add additional traffic and put the safety of our residents in question, that would be greatly appreciated. And that's it.
Thank you. Appreciate your
Thank you,
comment.
Ash.
Thank you.
That's all.
That's all. Okay. Move on to approval of the agenda.
Motion approved.
Don't we have a change?
I was going to say, we
We
have,
do have one. Item number 9 is requested for postponement.
now,
Move to approve the changed agenda.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item number 3, approval of the minutes for the September the 19th, 2019 meeting. Anyone have,
Changes?
anyone having changes or
Move for
correct?
approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Item number 4, discussion and public hearing on a final plat for the enclave at Sheffield, 6.72 acres, 21 lots, zoned R-1, OSR, island applicant.
This is basically Phase 4 of the Sheffield subdivision off of Turkey Creek Road. This is an extension of Thornbush Lane, which was platted in actually Phase 1 of Sheffield. There's 2 small cul-de-sacs with this phase. It has 18 house lots and 3 open space lots. The preliminary plat was actually approved about a year ago, a little over a year ago, September 2018. So now they're requesting final plat approval so that they can begin selling the house lots. The remaining comments concerning this item are at your places. They basically deal with completing field items and providing applicable letters of credit for the project. So the staff recommends approval of the final plat, subject to the 5 conditions.
You happen to know how many field items that are left?
Well, obtaining a better stand of grass is one of them. I think finishing up entirely. The two walking trail sections is another. I don't know to what level they're complete today. Earlier in the week, they were incomplete. The developer is here. He could probably give you a status report on that, but I have not been out there today to check it.
Mark, what's the basis of the two-year maintenance letter of credit? What's the basis of the 2 years?
Basically, that's 2 years rather than 1 year, so that anything that the town ultimately is going to take over for maintenance, we want to make sure that it doesn't have any issues, and it's been given enough time in the field and had enough use imposed on it to be able to assess that, so that if there are failures, that they would hopefully start to appear within 2 years. Sometimes it takes a little longer than 1 year, so that's why we have that in our subdivision regulations.
Could the applicant just come to the microphone?
Yes, sure, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Rick Wilkinson, 8518 Lawn Park Drive, Knoxville.
Now, Mr. Wilkinson, just about how many of the field items are left, and are there any significant ones that, or is it going to take a while to do?
No, I think what we have left to do is we have to install four street lights, which we're going to have done next week. And the walking trails were going to be installed today, but the contractor bought the wrong ballards. So we had to go to Reagan Steel and get the correct ballards that are removable for the walking trails, and that was my mistake. But they're prepared to pour. We should have had it done by today, but we didn't get it done today. So early next week, we should have the street lights in and have the walking trails poured with the correct ballards and the handicap pad, what needs to be there. The grass is growing now. We had a drought that kind of scared us trying to get that going, but it's I was watching it today, and I think I was watching it grow. So I think we're close to 70%. And other than the letters of credit that we'll put up going on, I think we're pretty much at the end of we've done everything we're supposed to do.
So you're okay with all these items that we still have on the
Yes.
list?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We've made clear to Rick is that we wouldn't be able to sign the plat until the field items are at a level of completion that our engineering department's comfortable with, and that we hold everyone else to. So he understands that.
Okay. Any more questions or comments?
No, I move for approval subject to the 5 stipulations.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, and glad
Thank you.
you're
I
getting
appreciate
close.
y'all. Take care.
Item number 5, discussion and public hearing on the site plan for the renovation of Smart Bank at 11216 Kingston Pike, 1 acre, zone C-1, MUTC, Barbara McMurray applicant.
Hello.
This is sorry, here.
Go ahead.
This is just a relatively minor site plan to where they're doing some exterior and interior renovations to what used to be the Foothills Bank and Trust there in front of the old Kroger. This particular project involves creating a new entry area, replacing the shingled roof with a standing seam metal panel roof, and then revising the parking lot to make it more functional. For example, on the south side, they're flipping the parking. Currently, the parking is not against the building, and they're flipping it to where the parking abuts the building, which obviously makes more sense. There is one comment that was at your place is about a screen wall, creating an issue where the parking spaces weren't deep enough. There's really not the ability to alter that due to code-related clearances that they have to have, and there's an existing wall there now. So one option that they could consider, I've talked with the architect about, or he mentioned it, is maybe creating compact spaces for those three, because they're only required to be 17 feet rather than 19 feet in depth. And
They'll
then,
mark
you
out
know,
with signs or with, on the pavement?
they'd have to be signed, as compact spaces, those three. The aisle width doesn't comply either, but they don't have enough physical space between the existing curb line to the south and the edge of the building. So it's what is there now. They're not making it any worse. But they are flipping the parking to where it's closer to the building, which is an improvement, at least from the staff's perspective. And the building, it's in the mixed-use town center. They're not reducing the masonry percentages on the building. They're making the building, at least in the staff's view, more modern-looking, and I think a visual enhancement in comparison to what is there now. But certainly, if you all have any questions, the applicant's here, and they could try to answer those. We had the 3 comments remaining on the site plan. The one of which I've already talked about is a possible solution, if you all are comfortable with that. The staff would be.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Mark? Applicant?
We got some materials with them.
Go ahead then.
Kelly Hedden, 505 Market Street, Knoxville. I don't have any comments unless there are any questions. I would love to answer them.
What's your
You're in
company?
agreement
Barbara
with making
McMurray
those
Architects.
compact places?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
We also have a finished board if you'd like to see it.
Yes.
Peeking at that?
Yeah, they did bring, yeah, might as well show that, sorry. Forgot about that.
Picture in here is.
Color and material samples there for they're proposing.
Screen wall, so you kind of get a view of the.
That out here, I have a question, a comment on your drawings. I noticed some of your drawings that we received in our packet say Knoxville, Tennessee. This is
Yes, that's a
actually
typo.
Okay.
So that was
We're
number
talking about
1.
Knox County?
Bill, we
It's
said
also
in
Knoxville.
anywhere else where it may appear incorrect on the plans, yeah.
This would be the paint color for the existing ephes. This would be the paint color for the existing brick. The heavy timber stain, the staining seam, and that's just the existing storefront color. It's in Smart Bank's typical palette. Pretty good.
You want to turn it and show it to the
That's the existing.
people in the audience there?
That wall. That's the existing.
Come down
Like
this
a
way.
model.
Step on down here.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, you did.
And you all are okay with the 3 subject twos that we have?
We are.
Motion to approve the site plan for renovations at Smart Bank, subject to items 1, 2, and 3.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain,
Thank you.
abstain.
I'm
Madam
sorry, I
Chairman.
missed that. What was the motion?
Abstain for personal reasons.
What were the motions? I apologize.
Motion was to approve the site plan for renovations to Smart Bank, subject to items 1, 2, and 3.
And you made that motion?
I did.
I seconded,
Okay,
or a bunch of us seconded,
okay. I got you.
Abstained.
and Roseanne abstained.
Thank you.
Item number 6, thank you all for coming. Thank you. Item number 6, discussion and public hearing on a re-subdivision plat for the Farragut Family Partnership, parcel 154.01, 154.10, tax map 130 along Outlet Drive, 20.6 acres, zoned OD-REE, Land Development Solutions applicant.
Sorry, had to put that away. This is a pretty minor subdivision, re-subdivision. It really involves dividing 6 current lots of record into 3, 2 on the south side of Outlet Drive, and the lot on the north side of Outlet Drive is and will remain an open space lot. It's not really buildable, and it counts toward the project's open space requirement per the subdivision regulations. Lot 3R1 is a little over 15 acres. That will be where the Topgolf would be constructed, and then Lot 2R1 would be for some other development related to the corridor. So the remaining comment, I think we just had one left, or two, obtaining the signatures, and comment number 1. And the staff recommends approval of this plat, subject to addressing those 2 comments.
Is the applicant here? Have somebody up there, please, in case anybody has any questions.
Rusty Baxa with Land Development Solutions.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a quick question. Lot 1, the open space lot, is that planted now? Is it drainage, or what is it? What?
It's mostly planted.
Okay.
I mean, it's really more of a buffer for that adjoining subdivision.
So you
It
guys-
got split, it got created when they built the road.
Yeah. So you guys will be maintaining that, though, with the
Yes.
rest of the property?
That'll just remain in a natural state.
Okay.
It really hasn't had any
Answers no.
maintenance, so.
Okay.
It's,
Maturely vegetated area right now.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that if something goes wrong, somebody knows
Who
that
to
it's
go
not
to.
the town of Farragut's job. All right, I appreciate that. That's all I had.
Questions or comments? And you all are in agreement with items 1 and 2 here?
Move for approval, subject to the 2 stipulations.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item number 7, discussion and public hearing on the site plan for Top Golf 11-400 Outlet Drive, 15.73 acres, zoned OD-REE, Land Development Solutions applicant.
This is a site plan for the Top Golf. It's a 48,000 square foot building, 2-level building. In addition to the obvious hitting bay area on the eastern half of the property, it will have an event space, a lounge, bars on both levels, I believe, outdoor seating areas. So it's kind of a regional entertainment center, I guess, if you will. The landscape plan was actually approved by the VRB last month. It's a very robust landscape plan. It does have bioretention areas in 3 or 4 different parts of the parking lot to meet the low impact development requirement. As you all know, the grading plan was approved 2 months ago by the Planning Commission, and this is a request for approval of the full site plan. Really, they did a really good job with the plan. There's only 6 remaining comments, and those are more or less just housekeeping items that are pretty typical of most site plan submittals. I do point out that once they get a final design on those retaining walls along Outlet Drive, that may be something that they would want to present to you all just for your information, but it would in no way hold up approval of the site plan or allowing them to start working on the project.
Have you had a chance to verify the lighting?
That would be one, yeah, on the plans, yeah.
Okay.
Mark, I noticed that there's about 5 comments related to fire protection. Is Dan okay with all the responses to those comments?
Yes,
So we're good with all that?
Yes, and I know he's talked with the project engineer about all his comments. I think he's satisfied that they've been taken care of.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Tell us who you are and give us an address.
Yeah, good evening. Todd Waldo, Top Golf, 8750 North Central Expressway, Dallas, Texas, 75231. We're, again, excited to be before the Planning Commission tonight. Excited about bringing Top Golf to the town of Farragut and the greater metro Knoxville area. One of the reasons why we chose Farragut is that it's a healthy and vibrant community with a very, very favorable business climate, great accessibility, and great visibility from the interstate as well. I'd like to commend the mayor and the administration and the staff for the very high level of professionalism and expertise that they've exhibited as we've navigated through the process here. It is a welcome change. We don't experience this everywhere we go, so we certainly are appreciative of it when it happens. So very, very thankful for the support of the town and looking for a favorable approval tonight. We have reviewed the staff comments and are in general acceptance of all of them. I would ask for one slight modification to comment number 6 regarding the retaining wall design. I would ask if that would be something that could be done at the administrative level as opposed to going back through the Planning Commission. I think everybody is pretty familiar with the project and the details of it. I'd like to ask the town to consider that request.
Mark, do you have any?
That's fine. If y'all are comfortable with that, we can review it internally. I mean, obviously, if we see an issue, we could always bring it to you, but I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
Same here.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments about that?
No, I'd say when you maybe get the design, you can let us know, and if we're interested in it, we
You
can
come
come
by
down.
and look at it
Yeah.
individually, yeah, that's fine.
I do have one additional question. Looking at the drawing, I noticed there's an area designated for the transformer in the front, and I couldn't see from the drawings if there's some protective ballards or something. Typically, when you locate a transformer adjacent to a driveway, you got some sort of protection from traffic. Is that addressed at all?
There are no bollards proposed around the transformer, but it will be heavily landscape screened on 3 sides except against the building, which is typical with our designs.
It's curb protected as well.
Yes.
Are there regulations about that? From my research, it sounded like some places have regulations related to transformers located near a traffic way. So,
I'm not aware of the electrical company requiring that, but if they do, we would provide it.
okay. Thank you.
I'm curious about the question by the staff about the bird issue. Any problems with birds being caught in the net?
Well, that is a very rare and unfortunate circumstance that's happened on just a very few occasions. We are taking a very proactive approach on a emergency safety protocol. If something like that were to happen, generally that is more associated with a venue that may be located closer to a body of water, a flyway or something of that sort, not necessarily next to an interstate such as this location. But we have taken proactive measures to minimize and prevent that from happening in the future.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Will there be a formal plan adopted and presented for the enclosure in case birds get entrapped? I've witnessed it firsthand where we have a netting that is also close to the interstate with another golf facility here locally. It's not in the town of Farragut, but it's in Knoxville. And when there was a heron that was trapped in the net, and unfortunately we caught all the different resources, and it just seemed like we couldn't get anybody to respond to that call, and it didn't turn out well. Unfortunately.
Yes, sir. So to answer your question, before the venue opens, there will be an emergency protocol procedural in place of how the operations team can address a situation like that if it were to occur.
Thank you.
Todd, I'd like to express how much we appreciate some of the changes that you guys incorporated from our initial Planning Commission workshop with you guys. You guys did really step up and make some changes that we asked you to make, and we do appreciate that. This is really more of a statement and just shot across your bow so your team is aware of it. As you're aware, you have a TDOT right-of-way directly adjacent to you. In that right-of-way, there's a lot of mature trees. Those majority of those trees are actually protected trees. Irrespective if TDOT gives you the okay to cut those trees, they're still within the corporal limits of the town of Farragut, and they cannot be removed. And I encourage you to, there's different types of trees. Dogwoods and redbuds are protected above 4 inches. Some other trees are protected above 8 inches in diameter, and some other trees are protected above 10 inches in diameter. We've had some other neighbors, not necessarily neighbors of yours, that have taken upon themselves to go out on a weekend and clear cut all the trees in the right-of-way. That is illegal to do that. So we're just giving you fair warning that I think some pruning can be done. Obviously, I know that you guys would like your facility to be visible from the interstate, and we understand that. But you cannot go out and clear cut the trees. You do have a lot of protected trees that are within the corporal limits of the town of Farragut. Irrespective if the owner gives you permission, it doesn't make it legal.
We understand that. We have no intention of doing that. It's within the right-of-way. We're not planning on touching it.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
I know there were some questions regarding lighting in particular. Maybe we do have a materials board that we can circulate as well. Obviously, we have something electronic that you all have in front of you, but we do have a actual material sample board that if anybody wants to view that, we'll pass that around.
And you all are in agreement with the 1 through 6?
1 through 5.
Amendment.
Yeah, just with a slight modification to 6.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I'm going to try and make a crack at this motion. I'm going to move to approve item number 7 with 1 through 5, an amendment to number 6 to read, when the final retaining wall decisions are determined, those will be submitted to staff for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Discussion and public hearing on the site plan for Admiral Landing, 11321 Kingston Pike, 1.19 acres, Zone C-1, MUTC Urban Engineering applicant.
Very sophisticated and understated.
Okay, let me go ahead and get started on this one here. This is the redevelopment of a very famous corner of the town. Thanks. The former Phillips 66 property. And this was actually brought to you all as a development concept back in July, just to get your initial thoughts on it, because it's got some, features, components that are a little different. The parking is shared between two properties. Access is shared. That's not particularly unusual. But frankly, in order to develop that property, certainly for any restaurant use, what they're doing here, it would be almost essential. And the staff for many years has tried to encourage, cooperation between those two property owners for something like what you see on the screen. So we're pleased to see that come to fruition with this project. This particular project has about 9,600 square feet of building area. It will have 3 tenant spaces. There's a brewery, restaurant concept with revolving food trucks on the eastern part of the development. It would be in this area here. And this is kind of another concept that's unique. In fact, I don't really know of anywhere in the country right offhand that has exactly what they're wanting to do. But essentially, it's an enclosed space. I believe it's going to be open air above in order to meet the building and fire code, but it's enclosed with slatted gates in front, so you don't really see the food trucks that are in there, but there's 3 different food truck bays for them to go in and come out of that space and rotate that periodically. So it's kind of an interesting concept. Most of the time you see food trucks that are just kind of out there in parking lots, and they're not really formalized into an enclosed space. But this is what they're proposing with this particular concept. The shared parking and access allows them to actually get rid of the access point on North Campbell Station Road, which is a great improvement from a staff's perspective. Basically, they would be you'd have a right-in, right-out on Kingston Pike, and then to get into the property from Campbell Station, you come out where the LCUB Customer Service Center is, and you would come down basically that way through the development. So it's got some curvature too, so that people are not, hopefully not going very fast when they come through there. This project has a lot of outdoor seating, which is another thing we're trying to encourage in the mixed-use town center overlay, which this project is within. Let me pull up the architectural renderings. I would say that a lot of the parking lot on the eastern portion of the development closer to the creek is going to be permeable pavers, similar to what you have at the southeast bank, the McPhee Park, that kind of product. And that was installed in order to serve as their detention, so that they don't have a traditional, open detention basin, because they frankly don't have enough real estate for that. So that's another innovative concept that they're employing with this particular development. Let me see if I can pull up the... show you what actually that kind of darkened area there to the right is that's where the pavers are proposed. I don't know if you can see that very well from the overhead, but the lighting will be similar to what you see over at the Gateway project, the Starbucks. It's going to be that bell-shaped lighting.
Can you put that last drawing up with the permeable pavers?
Would help to turn this front light off. I don't know.
No,
if
I've got it. I
got
just wanted to put it on my drawing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pretty substantial portion of the eastern part of the parking lot is permeable pavers, and a lot of that is just the water is essentially filtered and stored. You have kind of a water quantity and quality use of that space, so that's what's going on there. That's the lighting detail showing the bell-shaped light. That's something that, again, Starbucks has. I think it's a good-looking product. We're trying to encourage that in the mixed-use town center area to give it a higher standard. The building itself, this is the different elevations of the building. At the top is what you would see from Kingston Pike. Then the second elevation is what you would see on the north side of the building, which faces the medical facility. There's two types of brick, fiber cement to give it some architectural variation, and then some metal coping. All elevations are at least 75% face brick. That's required in the mixed-use town center. And then here are the other two elevations from the west. That's what you would see from Campbell Station Road. And then from the east, essentially from the creek side. And you can see in this lower part where the food trucks would be parked. This may highlight it a little bit better, but it's that area. So you can see the slatted kind of gates in there, and that allows for airflow, which is a requirement in the building and fire code. There's a certain amount of open air space that this particular type of use has to have because you have flammable structures, vehicles in a space. You also have, cooking being conducted out of these vehicles. So that's why they have the gate system there.
Mark, I'm going to interrupt you there because I think this is the right time. I noticed you mentioned in your discussion here that there's some fire code compliance issues. Is that the issue in that area there because of the trucks?
Yeah, that's a challenge that I think they're still working through. But I think one option, and we talked about this at the staff developer meeting, was to create more openings, like an open roof system, to have the gates, the shadow box gates, to let the air flow between the space and the exterior. I don't know that they've, the architect's here, he can speak to this better than I could, but I think they're still working on making sure what they ultimately present will be able to meet our adopted building and fire code.
Wouldn't the food trucks actually have some gas bottles or
Yeah,
something too? So
and
there's
that's
other
exactly-
additional fire loading as well?
That's
huh?
exactly right, yep, that's exactly right. It's
So
not
that's
just
not the
related
result,
to the
that's still
cooking,
progress.
it's related to the fuel that's within the vehicle
Yeah, the fuel
itself.
too, yeah, right.
Yep.
Thank you.
They've set this up architecturally and structurally so that if the food truck concept is, maybe doesn't catch on to the degree that they are hoping, that it could be enclosed into a typical,
Kitchen.
restaurant space or whatever, however else they want to use the space. So it has that opportunity.
I'm having a little difficulty understanding the flow of the traffic, the pedestrians inside, to get to these various tenants and whatnot. Is it all interior, or is there exterior as well?
Yeah, there's interior and exterior. Yeah.
Can you pull up that
Yeah, I was
diagram
trying
and
to
show
get
me
to
where?
that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, here's the site plan. One of the comments we did make was to try to see if they could get an additional sidewalk connection to the sidewalk along North Campbell Station Road. Because, we have the pocket park over on the other side on the town's property, Campbell Station Inn. So, the only connection they have right now is there from the front. They're kind of at the corner, and that's a good connection.
That's the corner of Kingston Pike and Campbell
Yes,
Station, isn't it?
that's right.
Yeah.
And,
Now-
that would be good to try to work one in this area as well. There's a sidewalk that kind of terminates there, maybe extend that on over.
It might be a matter of delineating places where they can cross in the parking lot, I think,
That's
is
my
that what you're trying to
concern.
get through?
Maybe
Yeah.
some crosswalk
Yeah,
striping
is
and,
that how you get to the
yeah.
parking places?
Yeah, there's sidewalk in there. It's hard to really see it all, but there's a fair amount of sidewalk around all the buildings on the back side, mixed in with required landscaping. Then you have the sidewalk along the two arterial streets, some of which they're redoing, and then the connection proposed there at the corner itself. There are some grade challenges with an additional connection on North Campbell Station Road, but we would encourage them to try to figure that out and see if they could get an additional pedestrian connection to North Campbell Station Road further north and up the property.
I think also the concern is, like if you're parking in those, like the 7 up at the top, so you get out of your car, and of course there's parking all around you. How can you safely navigate to the sidewalk? Are we going to provide some kind of visual direction? I mean, I know people
Yeah.
will walk through parking lots wherever they want to,
Right.
but are we giving them a place where they can cross and feel like they're being seen? Or like putting in a mound where you
Oh, yeah.
a raised crosswalk.
Yeah.
Maybe where you're seeing those 2 arrows that are showing traffic, maybe there's a raised crosswalk there to get people over to the sidewalk. So it's kind of stuff like that I think we need to just.
Yeah.
It looks like all
Yeah.
the sidewalk that I see is internal.
Yeah, so you just want to make sure that you're giving them a place.
Get them from the parking, the remote
Yeah.
parts of the parking lot
Right.
to the
Yeah.
activity center. Yeah.
Even if it's just painted, if it's just.
Sometimes
reshown.
we don't put sidewalk in on the front end. We see where people have been walking, and then that's where you go back and put the sidewalk in.
Yeah.
The Kroger's got that right now in a couple of places. I walked through some St. John's Wort this morning, going to a place where they kind of mowed a path through
Yeah.
there, but it
Well,
probably
and
should
that's an
have.
option too, just as long as we're aware that that's something that needs to be addressed,
Is that
to me, it needs.
the applicant could maybe speak to that? I mean, they could. I'm sure they would be happy to look into that because they want to make sure that this is supposed to be a kid-friendly project as well. So you want to make sure that it's safe and it's very clear on how to get to the building and safely.
Sorry, Chris Sharp, Urban Engineering, 11852 Kingston Pike. We'll look at that. I agree.
I'm not looking for like an expensive fix, just, it might just have to be painted, but you guys will know your flow. You've lived, eat, and breathe this, I'm sure. So you're probably thinking, okay, how are people getting out of their cars and how are they maneuvering around the parking lot?
I think we can enhance that with little effort. I mean, as far as no huge construction effort.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
In the shared space, parking space there, how are people going to know that's shared space, that they're allowed to park there? Are you going to have signs there somehow?
I don't think there's any plan to designate. It'll just, and I haven't fully read the conditions of the agreement, but I imagine that their operating hours, their peak operating hours will offset. So, these folks will be busiest in the evening when that other facility's closed and that kind of thing.
It's
Which is
part
nice.
of their
Just
shared
going to leave it
agreement.
to the customer to say, hey, maybe I can park here?
Yes, ma'am.
That's right. It's basically like a shopping center. I mean,
It's first come, first serve.
it's part of their agreement, and there is an executed agreement. They do need to, one of the comments the staff had is they do need to reference the latest exhibit, because they use an exhibit that was a previous concept.
We will.
So they just need to make sure they use that.
And Chris, I assume part of the agreement was that, because I see that it's marked on this drawing, that they're putting in handicap parking over in front of that other building and a ramp. in front.
Correct.
That was part of the agreement.
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
in an effort to move it closer to the door,
Yep.
their entrance.
I think that's a wonderful solution for them as well.
Yeah, that's in the agreement.
My plan, at the corner of Campbell Station, Kingston Pike, there's, of course, the light pole and the traffic, but it's not new. It says C inset on sheet C9, which isn't in our package, so.
Oh, okay.
Have you all looked at how to integrate that?
Yeah, we're not going to be in conflict with the traffic box. Actually, Daryl brought that up. I've talked with him because I think there's some improvements in the future coming, but we kind of
Is that-
deconflicted that.
Right away. There's a cropped corner there, and those traffic boxes that we're talking about, it's actually out in the right of way.
Is it
Yes.
going away, though, with our CMAC, all of what we're doing, or is that still going to stay there?
I think that the signal box is staying.
It will stay,
So yeah,
Okay.
we are avoiding it.
I was hoping to get rid of that.
unfortunately.
Chris, you guys have taken a tough site and done some really creative, innovative things with it. We really appreciate the fact that you got your neighbor involved and created some synergy with your neighbor to come up with a win-win solution for everybody.
That was the owners. I can't take credit for
Well,
that.
I figured somebody spent some time politicking that, and you've done a really good job of how to utilize a tough site and dealing with the egress and ingress. The only comment that I have is think about your tenant space number 3. I suspect that's probably most geared towards a full-service restaurant or even a fast casual restaurant, but more of a a permanent restaurant. You might want to think about with your crew that's here and maybe the architects to make sure that your parapets are going to be able to cover the mechanicals. With restaurants, not only do you have some big HVACs, a lot of times you have package units on the roof instead of split units for restaurants, but you also have your grease collection system on for your hood,
Right.
and they're really big units. We've sometimes had some folks underestimate the height of their parapets that are needed to try to screen those, and then you're having to come back in after the fact and try to come up with some solution to try to hide those mechanicals, and it's challenging and expensive on the back end versus to plan for on the front end. But my thought is, especially if you're thinking about, I see that those are 20-foot parapets. I just don't know how high the ceiling heights are in there. So it doesn't really tell me how much room you have up there on the roof. Again, this is not something we got to deal with tonight. This is just a suggestion to your architects to kind of think about just making sure your parapets are sufficient to be able to screen those mechanicals.
Excellent.
I have a question. On the drawing, it says tentative microbrewery. Is there a microbrewery going in here, or is there not a microbrewery going in there?
I think architects here.
Brian Nicholson, Studio 4 Design. I'm 305 Dominion Circle, Farragut, Tennessee. It is the current business plan. I do not believe it's for it to be a microbrewery where beer would be produced there. It would be more of a tap room where they would just be serving beverages from other local breweries.
Okay, thank you.
It's a really great-looking building, and especially great-looking compared to what we've been looking at for all these years.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of money in the old building over the years too, but, and I hope to in this one. But one of my questions is, the right in, right out only is, and Mark, please comment on this too, is the design of that going to keep people from doing that?
Can't always prevent.
Yeah. As I was
Stupid.
telling Mark about one of those that I
Doing
saw
things
this
they
week, that
shouldn't
somebody
do.
made a U-turn in Kingston Pike to go into the Weigels at Smith Road. I
It's good.
almost wrecked because it scared me so, seeing them doing that.
Well, it does
and
have
this
a
is a
raised
really bad
island.
place here.
It would have a raised island. I wish the radii was a little tighter personally for pedestrians, but I do understand why it's a 30, because it is coming off of a major arterial. And you have certain vehicles that are going to be using this site that probably need the 30. But yeah, I mean, it's a raised concrete barrier. So if you did make a poor choice, you might be going to the repair shop.
Luckily, it's right down the road. So.
Yeah, you just.
You got lots of tire shops too, so surely they.
If they bust a
Yeah.
tire, we're covered, huh?
Only thing you could do is potentially make it even more pronounced. Flare that out a little bit more, potentially. I don't know.
I think they've already got it tightened to about 13 feet.
They've got it pretty tight. I don't think you could really do a lot.
Well, not with trying to get delivery trucks and food trucks in on a regular basis without tearing up the inside curb.
Right, unless you had some kind of mountable curb on the very far outside, if you were wanting to extend that a little bit more, where certain vehicles could mount it without any problem, but it would be more of a deterrent for a typical vehicle to stay out of that space.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no surefire way to keep everyone. I mean,
No,
people are going to do what they're going to do.
I witness that almost daily.
I see it all the time.
Consequences if they do it.
So.
I'm comfortable with it, and it's a vast improvement to what they have now.
For sure, for sure.
So,
for sure.
yeah, I think it's...
And I appreciate the fact that the Kingston Pike is closed up. That's
Station.
Campbell Station, right?
Yeah.
And it's, the building is just so much for the interest of the town of Farragut. We appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I'm just curious as to how far from the intersection of Kingston Pike and North Campbell Station is the entrance from North Campbell Station?
It's the I guess it'd be the southernmost entrance to Village Green Shopping Center. So it's the one that goes behind SunTrust Bank. It's that road. It's basically directly across from that driveway.
LCUB entrance.
It's
correct.
where LCUB
Correct.
comes
Okay.
down, yeah.
What'd you say, North?
The LCUB entrance. I mean, it's
Okay.
So I'm gonna guesstimate probably 300 feet.
Okay.
at least, if not maybe more there. You might.
That's great because it gets you out of that stack area.
Yeah, it gets you
Yeah.
away from the intersection.
So that's another benefit
Okay.
there.
I'm just curious, the food truck service, would each bay, would they be serviced from either side? Where
Yeah.
they could go nose in or back in? For some of them that are trailers and not
Yes,
set
the
on
concept
spoilers.
would be to be able to go forward in or backwards in with, as was mentioned, trailers is a big portion of food truck business now. A lot of people like to use a trailer for various reasons. And I think on a daily basis, we would have to just evaluate who is there and what the window type is on their vehicle and arrange vehicles accordingly.
I think what you guys did with the food truck area, trying to solve some of those issues and creating some open air for the food trucks, but for some folks, they could actually, looks like to me, they could stand in the rain and still stay dry and order from the food truck. I think that's real creative. Have you thought about any kind of like shore power for food trucks that have, most of them are on generators, so they probably don't want shore power, but it might be something nice just so they can shut their generators off.
The intention was we would have basically shore power. We'd have electrical, water, and other hookups so that the vehicles can come in and they don't have to run generators. There's no noise associated. They just have the electrical power that they're pulling straight from the building.
Perfect.
And that's a benefit for them and their business model
Sure.
as well, that they don't have to buy gas and things for that day.
And run that noisy
Like
generator.
an RV park?
Yeah.
Excuse me?
An RV park?
Exactly.
Probably the
like an RV
same
park.
hookups and everything, those twist locks.
there any sort of plans in place to, if they're a trailer, they have a tongue? And if you back in, the tongue would be toward the gate, but if you pulled in, it would be toward the front. So you're going to back these in and put some sort of safety cones around these things?
I believe so. We'll have to examine the exact procedures of how the business operates when we get to that portion of their work, but I'm sure we'll come up with any kind of measures that we need for public safety around the vehicles.
Okay.
You guys have any problems with the subject twos?
I set my list. No, ma'am.
You're fine.
Yeah, we're fine.
I'm going to make a motion to approve with the subject twos.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Can't wait till you're open.
Thank you all.
Look forward to it. Item number 10 has been postponed. I'm sorry, item number 9 has been postponed. Again, I want to say that this is a workshop item for discussion only tonight. There's no vote that'll be taken on this item. This means we'll be back again before the Planning Commission at a later date, before it's recommended to go on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. As with any workshop item, we're only here to gather information on the rezoning request. Planning Commission asking questions of the staff and the applicant. We're not here to discuss the merits of the project. This is a request, this is information on a rezoning change that we are discussing. The staff will present the item, and then the applicant will present the item and having questions that.
The applicant.
We are the applicant. Okay, so Mark will do all of this.
This is not a rezoning. This is not really a discussion of a specific piece of property or a rezoning. It's a text amendment to the zoning ordinance potential. I mean, it's up to the commission and ultimately the board if they want to do that. But it's not a rezoning discussion at this time.
It does go on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, though.
Ultimately, it would.
Ultimately,
This is
okay.
just a workshop, just to get some feedback from you all and the public on this question, I guess. Just to give you a little bit of background on this item.
May I ask
Yep.
one question before you start? My understanding was this is not a revision of any zoning, it's an addition. We're
making
a new one, R5, right? Possibly.
Well, that's what.
Potentially.
Not
It's an
necessarily.
amendment, but it's not.
We're just
it's-
bringing it up for discussion.
Well,
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, I understood, read it to
That's
say
right.
change. I don't think we're
Really up
changing
to you all.
anything, we're adding, aren't we?
Well, we could. We could
Possibly.
be changing, or we could be adding, or we could be
Could be.
creating a new zoning district. We could be eliminating one. I think we wanted to see what kind of discussion we have and what
Or
kind
not.
of thought process.
Yeah.
Or not.
That's right.
Or not. We could do nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Why it's a workshop.
Yep.
I don't know what we'll do, but anyway, what the issue or the matter, the reason this is before you is we have a comprehensive land use plan, and that's a vision document. It's not requirements. And then we have our zoning ordinance, which has your zoning districts, and it has requirements. That's the difference between a general difference between the two. When you look at your zoning districts, they should be, they should reflect your comprehensive plan. And when we updated our plan in 2012 and we created a bunch of maps for the first time for the town, there was a land use created, medium density residential, and it was provided for 6 to 12 dwelling units per acre if the property was appropriate for that particular land use designation. That's a pretty broad range, and if you look at the text of the comprehensive land use plan for the medium density residential land use and some of the other land uses as well, it's pretty broad. It talks about detached, attached, apartments, all being encompassed in potentially a medium-density residential land use. So we felt like after dealing with that for a few years, and we had our steering committee that has been looking at the comprehensive land use plan look at this a little bit closer, and they recommended that we break up the medium density land use into two different land uses. You have a real medium density land use, and that would be up to 8 dwelling units per acre, and it could include detached, attached, small apartments, all those type of uses. And then you would have the high-density residential land use that would be up to 12 dwelling units per acre. To give you kind of a visual difference between the two, at least here in the town, what's on the screen there, that's Derby Run. It's just to the north of Sugarwood and the east of, or west of Kingsgate and south of First Choice Automotive. It's a transitional development, but it is a relatively small footprint, 2-story product that looks fairly residential, almost looks like a townhome development. That would be considered a medium density land use type development, at least from the staff's perspective. The density in that development is 7.75 units per acre, and there aren't any building footprints in Derby Run that are in excess of 7,500 square feet. So that kind of gives you what that might look like. And then if you go to, let me pull up and I've got some images of other communities too. We were in Franklin last week looking at some things, and I'll show you some pictures of that. But if you look at, this is out at North Shore Town Center. This is more of a high density residential land use type product. It looks less residential and almost more commercial. To me, that's a big difference between a medium density product versus a high density product. The medium density is going to look more like kind of like a townhome, maybe a little larger. It's going to have less density than a high density, obviously. It's going to be no more than 2 stories. And then the footprint area is another thing that really is going to have to be looked at, because there is a clear difference between a footprint of a medium versus a high-density residential building, at least from the staff's perspective. And another thing you might consider are roof pitches. If you looked at Derby Run, that looks residential with the roof pitch. You go over to Sequoia Hills, a little bit of older product, Sequoia Village, 2-story. It looks like a large house in some ways. Those are medium density residential type structures. That's been there a long time, obviously in a very wealthy part of the county. And then if you look at some of the other communities that we have visited here recently, I'm going to pull up an image in Franklin. Whoops. This is a product off of Franklin Road. This is a townhome building. And this particular building, I think, is 6,000 square feet. It has 4 dwelling units per building. 4 individual spaces per building. They're 24 feet wide. As you can see, this particular product is a 120-foot long building, 50 feet in depth, and every unit, of course the townhome is not multifamily because a townhome is a single dwelling unit all the way up, and it has a front and rear access to outdoor space, whereas an apartment is 3 or more dwelling units that can be stacked on top of each other. But as far as visually, you can make a medium density residential apartment look like that. You just have to employ certain, architectural treatments and things like that and deal with the scale. One thing they did for this particular building, and it's about 6,000 square feet, was to break it into modules where each each 25-foot section has very different architecture. You can see the roof lines vary. The brick is different. I'm not saying this is necessarily good or bad product. It's just a way of breaking a bigger building up so that it appears to be more residential, more human scale. That's really the key difference from the staff's perspective between something that might be a medium density, either attached single family or multifamily product versus something like what we showed there with the North Shore Town Center, or at the overlook that's nearing completion north of the interstate. That's a high density residential land use. It's right at 12 units per acre. And the issue that we have is right now we don't have a zoning district that actually caps density at 8 units per acre for a attached or small multifamily project. That's the reason this is being presented to you. Right now, if somebody wants to rezone property for apartments, they have to go with either the R6 or the open space overlay R6, and both of those allow up to 12 units per acre. And the scale of the buildings that could be permitted in R6 and the overlay is potentially bigger than what you might have if you were to create a zoning district that was kind of a scaled down version of an R6, kind of a hybrid between an R4 and an R6. Let's see here if we had any other. Does anybody have any questions about any of these images right offhand? I do have some people ultimately that have signed up to speak here.
Mark, can I
yeah.
I just shoot in here for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
When we were going through the land use plan update and we amended the medium density residential from 6 to 12 to 6 to 8 and created a high density residential, we left out one important thing that we probably should have done, is gone back and taken another look at the land use description for medium density residential and created a land use description for high density residential. So at this point, after reading this, I thought to myself, this is not really what I was thinking when we restricted it to 6 to 8 units. I was thinking more along the lines of the beginning of the character. The character right now for medium density residential reads a mix of attached, detached housing types, may include single family houses as well as small multifamily dwellings such as duplex, triplex, townhomes, and small condo apartment buildings. I think we're putting the cart before the horse. I think we need to go back, take a look at the medium density residential description, with the idea that we have it now restricted to 6 to 8 units per acre. Redefine that, take a look at that, and then we need to have a high-density residential land use description in place. And then we can take a look at what we want to do with the zoning ordinance for 6 to 8 units per acre. Personally, I would prefer attached and detached housing types in the medium density residential. But that's my personal opinion. I think we need to open this up for a land use plan steering committee type workshop, bring in the public and have some good discussion about what we envision for medium density residential before we move ahead with this.
Yep. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking for is that we table this discussion until we can address the deficiencies in our land use plan.
Well, that's up to you all. I mean, if that's what you want us to do, we can have the steering committee if you want, have them. We need to get them back together anyway with the McPhee Road. But this will probably be a separate discussion, obviously. I mean, we have some thoughts about this from the staff's perspective, but certainly I do agree that the plan is a little broad right now for not just medium density residential, but a number of the really land use descriptions. But since we're dealing with this one right now, it would be a good idea to enumerate the differences between what the vision is between a medium versus a high-density residential land use. So, yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Mark, this is useful information that you've put together nonetheless, because it gives us an idea of different options that are available.
Yeah.
So this isn't wasted effort.
I've
And
tried to
we'll
look
probably
at-
revisit some of this at some point in time.
Yeah, and something, to think about is if you want to pursue this is to look at the transition concept, kind of like what we did with the S1. And, maybe you have the smaller apartment, and then as you transition outward, if it's an appropriate area for this, then you would have attached, single-family, detached, things like that. That's what this one development in Franklin does. It's obviously a big piece of property in a different area, but they start out with kind of a town center, and then they have larger apartments, about 12,000 square feet, and then they go into these town homes that are roughly 6,000 square feet, and then beyond that, it's a detached single family, and it's obviously a very viable product. But all that is within the same development. So
I don't know how the rest of the planning commission feels about that.
Well, I agree with you. I think it does need to be worked on. I think we're in gray water here.
I'm always for more explanation of what we're talking about, written down in the ordinances. And if we feel like that's not the case in this, we need more definition. I'm agreeable to that.
Okay.
Well, I guess the key question to think about at this point is if you feel there is a void in our zoning districts in comparison to the land use plan.
Well, I guess that's something that we need to determine.
Yeah, I think that.
With the
I was
land
gonna
use
say that. I
plan.
think that's a fundamental question
Yeah,
first,
okay.
and see how each one lays out.
Yeah.
And do they integrate, or are they
Yeah.
overlap, or what are the
Okay,
key
yeah.
features? So I think we got to kind of step back and look at the bigger picture
Yeah.
and not get our nose down on the paper too far.
I do have some people that have signed up to speak
Okay.
to this. I don't know how you-
One of the things, again, as we had last time, do we have, how many people do we have? 3. We will ask you to hold your comments to 5 minutes, please, or less. You don't have to talk that long. And then if we have any questions, we will ask them of you. When you come up here, please tell us who you are and where you live. And when we do want you to you need to come to the microphone. We can't hear you if you don't. The people at home can't hear you if you don't. So please do that. And also, let Mark call out the names and let you all get lined up here, so when one person finishes, we can move on to the next person.
We have Rich Cataldi first, and then Michael Wilson.
You say you had a third?
Yes, sir. On Holztrager is the
John's
third
here
one.
too.
Okay, well, all three of you.
Rich Cataldi, 419 Belfield Road. My concern when I looked at this for tonight was the loss of the 20-acre limit that we had in the R5 that sits now. The current R5 has a 20-acre limit to its development size. That disappeared. And my concern is if we start looking at coming up with something that we define as medium density, even if it's capped at 8 units, and you have somebody come in and want to rezone something R5 at 8 units, and you're looking at 40 acres, you're talking about 320 housing units, and that's a massive area to be looking at. One of the things that I see in the land use plan has been visuals. You've made a comment on that several places in the land use plan where it's got to look like. It's got to look like this. It's got to look like that. It's got to look like there's space between these. When you start looking at multiple acres beyond 20 with even at 8, you're talking about something that's going to look massive. That's all I have for you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Thanks, Rich. Good point.
On comments to tear this R5 and everything that was in it tonight. I had handouts for you with diagrams, and thank you, Vice Mayor Pavlin, for stepping up and making the point that we have the cart in front of the horse, and we do need to look at that high density and medium density land use description and ferret that out. First of all, I want to say I think that would be a welcomed effort by those that belong to our group, the Farragut Citizens for Responsible Growth and Development. We have close to 600 people in our group online on Facebook right now, many of them, I'm sure, sitting in this room. As you can see, we are here. We want to work with the town to resolve issues like this, to make sure that our future growth and development works for all citizens of the town. And so I would just like to add, and I may have missed it, Vice Mayor Pavlin, because I was getting really excited when you talked about looking at the land use plan. But the other piece is I presented to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and Citizens Forum at their last meeting is not only do we need to look at those land use descriptions, but we really do need to go back. It's been 7 years since that plan was put together. We need to go back and look at all the large parcels of property in town and evaluate them against these descriptions as they're rewritten and go, does that make sense? Just the one example I'll give you is right behind what I call the Charleston Homes, right behind Town Hall here. There's about 78 acres back there in 2 different parcels of land, plus another 8 to 10 acres on the front. That's Greenway on the front of South Campbell Station Road. That land is low-density residential in the future land use description. That sits right next to where we want to create our town center, where we want to have young people moving in that want to participate in the activities in a town center. Why that property was ever listed as low-density residential in the future land use plan is beyond me. To me, that's a prime property that we need to look at, along with the close to 100 acres that are vacant or almost vacant around the Boring Road area, the areas that are currently being looked at along McPhee in the southwest side of town that are also, I think, still listed as low-density residential in the future land use plan. I think for all of us, I think it's time that we take a pause, as you said, not only look at these land use descriptions, but go back and reevaluate where we're at, reevaluate the traffic increase that's happened in the last 5 years since I've lived here, and probably more so in the last 7 years since that land use plan was put together, and really look at our infrastructure, our roads, and really plan for the next 7 years going forward, and not just looking at parcels individually, but doing a comprehensive look at the town and saying, okay, if this is going to be high density, how does that impact the roads? How does that impact the light situation? Look at this in a comprehensive aspect versus looking at it piecemeal as these things come in front of this group and in front of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So I will avail my time, and I will get the word out to folks that are interested via our group. And I'm sure, like I said, several of those are in the room. We are here. All I would ask is that if this group could make sure that these are held in a time that allows people that work during the day and work downtown Knoxville to come and attend these meetings, and they're not held during normal working hours, that they're held in conjunction with a meeting like this, workshop it either at this meeting or like we do with some of the stuff before the BOMA, workshop it at 6 o'clock before this meeting kicks off. That would be much appreciated, so we can get as much resident input as you can get for all of these areas. And again, I thank you for tabling this, if that is going to be your motion, and taking that step back and taking a look. I think we all are ready to do that and ready to work with this group and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to make and keep Farragut a great place to live. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Mike.
Sure, Roseanne.
I'm in agreement with you that we need to look at the comprehensive, or take a comprehensive look at the land use plan. However, is it fair for an owner to come before the planning commission before that effort is completed and ask for a rezoning, and us turn them down and say, hey, you got to wait till we get through with this plan.
So what I would say to that point is if there is an item that comes up for a specific piece of property, then I would think at the time that that comes up, this panel should, or this commission should immediately take that action up and address the future land use plan, ensure that is publicized, ensure residents know that they can come to speak to that, and that should be an issue that is addressed at the time of the rezoning. I think it's completely unfair to the residents of your neighborhood, Baldwin Park, that, other folks that live around these large residential properties, that we've done large portions of the town, Outlook Drive, Watt Road corridor, now we're looking at McPhee, and we would say, well, because somebody's put application in, we're not going to consider whether that's the right land use, as people on this panel and elected members of this town have already determined, probably is something that we need to look at. So I would say if there is a situation like that, that rolls to the top of the list. We hold the meetings just like we hold now, but we have that discussion and say, is this the proper use of the land under the future land use plan with everything that's developed over the last 6 or 7 years? I think that's fair. I think it gives everybody, including that landowner, a voice in the process.
Thank you.
Thank you again. I appreciate the town's foresight to take this deeper look and really look at where we're at and where we need to go in the future years here. And again, we look forward to working with all of you to make this a successful project and really line out our future for the next 7 to 10 years for the town of Farragut. Thank you.
Have somebody else?
Yeah, John Holstrager.
Hi, John Holstrager, 345 Bernie Circle, Farragut. Just two quick things. I think I can finish in a minute. First, I want to say thanks to the staff, BOMA, MPC, for what you're doing on Outlet Drive. I mean, I think Topgolf is a great addition. There's a lot more things coming that are going to be terrific for the town of Farragut. We really like that. We love the fact that it's not right in the core of Farragut. It's kind of on the fringe, and it keeps that intensity and traffic out of the core of Farragut. So really nice work on that. Please keep doing that. The second thing I'd like to say is I would also like to support what Vice Mayor Podlin is proposing, and that is we take a little deeper look at the land use plan and at what we mean by medium density. At the request of the Baldwin Park Board, I've done a fair amount of community organizing. I've got about 24 of the largest HOAs in Farragut now organized and interested in the land use plan. So at the point you do go forward with this, I think it'll be reasonably easy for us to get concerned citizen input from a variety of perspectives and to help with this, as opposed to last time when I organized a bunch of folks, we just got angry and red in the face and didn't do anybody any real good. So we're ready to help when you're ready to go. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Perhaps your organization, John, already will help speed this process up. I'm concerned about it's dragging on and on and on. I think if we go that approach, it's got to be done and move on with it,
We'd like that too.
And I would also like to say that in the past, when we have had meetings for the development of the comprehensive land use plan and several others, people need to turn out at that time too. We advertised and tried to encourage people to come, and we had a fair turnout, but unfortunately people just seem to turn out when it affects them personally right then. And so all of this is very discouraging to me, who we spent a lot of time with the comprehensive land use plan, that at the time the turnout was such a small portion of our citizens. So please, in the future, pay attention to these and come. It makes a huge difference for the future of the town of Farragut. Don't just come when it affects you personally. So I just want to add that. Does anybody else have anything
I
they
have
want to add?
just something to add to your statement. I think part of this, because I'm guilty of this, I did not take part in the 2012, the development of this plan. I came onto the Planning Commission in 2013, just as you all were adopting this. The hardest thing about municipal government is no one tells you, there's no book that tells you how it works. You're not taught it in high school. It's very difficult to wade in and understand what's going on. So, I mean, and we toss around, I was reminded, we toss around R1, R1 OSR, R2, R3, and we all know what that means, but the citizens don't know what that means. They don't know when it comes to the Planning Commission. They don't know when it goes to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. They don't know what a BZA is, and why should they? I can say that probably most of us didn't know those until we got involved with it. So what I'm encouraged about is we are talking about a land use plan, and people are understanding what that means, and they're understanding there's a difference between that and zoning ordinances. So when people know what's going on, they can look at a planning commission agenda in the future and say, oh, I know what that means. I need to go to that. And so I'm very encouraged that through some very difficult, trying times is when we get engagement, and hopefully people are seeing the value of engagement in a town like the town of Farragut, because it is a very special place to live. It is run in a very unique way as far as who's involved and community volunteers. And so I'm very encouraged that from this going forward, we will have some more positive engagement with our residents.
I think that's a time to insert a commercial for our Leadership Farragut. Is that the name of it?
Intro to Farragut.
Intro to Farragut.
Intro to Farragut. Intro to Farragut. For people to get involved to coming to those, to apply for those when the time comes.
And we have a handful of them in the audience tonight.
Well, I want to
So
read it.
that's just a great way to learn all of these things that that people need to know to be involved and make Farragut a great
You guys
place.
are in the audience. I didn't even realize that.
We appreciate the fact that you want to do that. And I know it's hard, especially I'm always encouraging younger people to get involved, but it's hard when you have a young family to do that. But it's actually the people of those younger ages who are going to be here to take advantage of all this. By the time the park gets done, I may not be here anymore. So we appreciate the younger people getting involved, because it is their future that we're looking at. It's the comprehensive land use is 20 years down the road is how far we look out at that, 12 to.
Well, this is to 2025, isn't it? It was 2012 to 2025.
So we appreciate and encourage people to come to those Introduction to Farragut classes. And if you can't encourage somebody else to do that, please. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Well, I think it's great that Louise expects the citizens to know all that planning commissioners and aldermen know, but I think that's most unreasonable.
I don't expect it. I just say I'm encouraged.
Well, encourage is okay, but you can expect that they're not going to get that involved, most of them, the majority, until it hits home. And John, I think you have got the ideal solution to having representatives from areas to get involved and come to these meetings and carry it back to your homeowner associations.
Yep.
You can't expect 90% of the citizenry to attend these meetings. It's not going to happen.
I agree. I agree.
It's unreasonable, but continue your work, please, John and Mike Wilson.
So we'll put in another advertisement for the fact that the mayor is planning you want to tell about your?
Yes, I can. We have quite a few subdivisions that do not have homeowner associations, and most of them, the developers did not put that into place, and some of them were built in phases, and that's something that we're going to have I'm going to personally have a class on to teach the subdivisions that do not have a homeowner association how to start one, how to combine phases to where they can do that, how to use petitions to get that done. We have one particular subdivision that's doing that right now. It's combining the phases, and we'll be putting together a homeowners association. That will be the model going forward whenever we do this. It'll be after the first year, after we get the community center open, and I hope that all the subdivisions that don't have homeowners associations will participate. Some of them may not want one, or they may just want to know what all is involved to see if they do want one. So anyway, that's something that's coming down the pike. So you can tell your friends to look out for it, okay?
Any more commercials? Mayor's Night Out. And also, I'm always plugging the Christmas that's coming sooner than later here. It's getting up on us soon, and be sure and come out to the park at the library, Founders Park, and see the Christmas decorations. They're going to light it a little earlier this year before Thanksgiving, so if you've got relatives coming into town to do that, but it is quite a display, and the maintenance department works on that year-round, and it's a great asset to our community.
Mark, we need a motion.
Not really. I mean, it's not an action item.
It was a workshop.
So, no utilities tonight? Okay. In that case, October 17th, 2019 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission is adjourned.
Get this started.